It was the summer of 1993 in Cedar Falls, Iowa, when three friends Amanda Rodriguez, Kelly Thompson, and Sarah Chundy decided to spend the afternoon by the Shell Rock River. The town was quiet, surrounded by endless stretches of cornfields shimmering under the July sun. For many local families, the river was a place of relaxation, a sanctuary where parents watched their children swim in shallow pools while teenagers escaped parental supervision to laugh and share secrets under the trees. That day, however, would mark the beginning of a mystery that would haunt the town for decades. Amanda was the adventurous one, always the first to suggest something daring. Kelly, with her sharp wit and ambition to become a journalist, often carried a notebook to record thoughts and observations. Sarah, quieter and more reflective, preferred to stay cautious, but she loved her friends too much to resist tagging along. They were inseparable, three girls, bound by youth, dreams, and the unspoken trust that nothing could ever come between them. The water shimmered with golden light as they waded into the shallows, their laughter carrying through the hot afternoon air. But as the hours passed, the river grew quieter. Families packed up their towels and picnic baskets, the younger children growing restless in the heat. By late afternoon, the three girls were among the few still lingering. That was when everything changed. Sarah recalled later that it happened so quickly she could barely piece the memory together. One moment, Amanda and Kelly were laughing on the bank, tossing pebbles into the current, and the next, there was a sound, something sharp and foreign in the peaceful summer air. She remembered Amanda's sudden scream, Kelly's shout for her to run, and then the blinding panic that propelled her feet forward. She ran into the trees, heart hammering, branches scratching her arms, her breath ragged with fear. She didn't stop until she stumbled into a clearing where a fisherman found her. Trembling and incoherent by the time police arrived at the riverbank, Amanda and Kelly were gone. No footprints, no belongings, no signs of struggle, only Sarah's terrified account that someone had been there. The authorities launched a massive search, combing through the woods and dragging the river, but nothing surfaced. As the hours turned into days, and days into weeks, the case grew colder. For the families of Amanda and Kelly, time seemed to freeze in place. Their bedrooms remained untouched, their possessions waiting as though the girls might walk through the door at any moment. For Sarah, survival came at the cost of unbearable guilt. She replayed that moment over and over, convinced that if she had done something differently, if she had screamed louder, if she had fought harder, perhaps her friends would still be alive. Therapy sessions, endless interviews with detectives, and the constant whispers of neighbors shaped her teenage years. The survivor's guilt became a shadow she could never fully escape. Detective Morrison, a young officer at the time, took the case personally. He spent years following leads, chasing rumors across state lines, and revisiting every inch of the riverbank. But the trail always ended in silence. For the people of Cedar Falls, the disappearance of Amanda and Kelly became a grim legend, whispered about at campfires and used as a warning for children to stay close to home. Yet for the families, there was no folklore, only raw, unending grief. Patricia Thompson, Kelly's mother, clung to the hope that her daughter might still be alive, pouring her energy into community vigils and missing persons advocacy. Carlos and Maria Rodriguez, Amanda's parents, aged visibly in the years that followed, their home slowly becoming a shrine to the daughter they lost. And Sarah, carrying the unbearable knowledge that she had lived while her friends had not, struggled to move forward with her life. But what no one in Cedar Falls could have imagined was that this story wasn't over. The tragedy of 1990 was only the beginning of a tale that would stretch across decades, weaving together sacrifice, survival, and choices too heavy for any young girl to bear. The Shell Rock River, serene and unassuming, had become the stage for a mystery that would haunt not just a town, but generations to come. In the months that followed the disappearance, Cedar Falls was consumed by grief and speculation. Flyers, with Amanda and Kelly's photographs, were taped to lampposts, pinned to grocery store bulletin boards, and mailed across the state. Candlelight vigils were held on the riverbank, where parents clutched photographs of their daughters and prayed aloud for miracles that never came. Detective Morrison worked tirelessly. He interviewed every fisherman, camper, and passerby who might have been near the river that day. He followed up on rumors of a suspicious van seen in the area, of strangers passing through town, and of a possible connection to other disappearances. In the Midwest, yet every lead dissolved into nothing. It was as though the girls had vanished into thin air, Sarah was both a key witness and a fragile survivor. The police asked her repeatedly to recount the details, what she had heard, what she had seen, what she had felt, but her memories blurred with fear. Sometimes she remembered a man's shadow on the trees. Sometimes she was certain she had heard a vehicle door slam. Other times, all she could recall was the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. As she ran, each retelling left her exhausted, guilty, and angry at herself for not knowing more. Amanda's parents, Carlos and Maria, refused to give up. They transformed their home into headquarters for the search, storing boxes of tips, maps, and handwritten notes from psychics who claimed to know Amanda's fate. Maria called every police station within 100 miles at least once a month, demanding updates. Carlos took time off work to follow sightings across state lines, always returning with disappointment etched deep into his face. Patricia Thompson, meanwhile, became relentless. Kelly's mother spent every penny she could spare on private investigators, background checks, and even late-night drives down back roads, hoping to stumble upon some forgotten clue. The community admired her dedication, but whispers began that she was losing herself to obsession. Still, Patricia didn't care. For her, the search for Kelly was not a choice. It was the only way to keep breathing Sarah's life. However, had splintered, she struggled in school, haunted by nightmares and whispers from classmates who said she had abandoned her friends. Some parents discouraged their children from spending time with her, fearing the darkness that seemed to follow her. When she graduated and left for California, it was as much an escape as it was a step forward. She hoped the distance would quiet the voices in her head, but the survivor's guilt never loosened its grip. Years passed, the case grew colder. Detectives transferred, files collected dust, and tips slowed to a trickle. But in Cedar Falls, the river remained the same, still winding its way past fields of corn, still attracting families in summer, still whispering secrets in the dark. For the town, the mystery of the Shell Rock River became part of its folklore. For the families, it remained an open wound, and for Sarah, it was both a story she tried to bury in the depths of her mind, yet one that haunted her dreams, reminding her of the friends who had walked into the woods and never returned. On July 14, 2024, at 11:47 p.m. in California, Sarah's phone rang in the dark. She expected a hospital, a neighbor, bad news about her aging parents. Instead, a hoarse voice, familiar and Sarah, it's me, it's Amanda. The world narrowed to the small glow of her screen and the sound of freeway traffic through static. Amanda said she was at a truck stop off Interstate 380 outside Cedar Falls. She needed help getting home. She couldn't explain where she'd been, not now, maybe not ever. And then the sentence that ripped 31 years open. Kelly isn't coming home. She saved us both. The line went dead. By morning, Sarah was on a plane, gripping the armrests as miles of cloud unfurled below. 31 years of what-ifs thudding in her chest like a second heartbeat. The truck stop was the kind of place no one looks at. Twice bright lights, humming coolers, the smell of coffee and diesel. But in a corner booth, a woman sat watching the parking lot, as if waiting for a signal only she could read. Amanda. Her hair was shot through with grey, her clothes threadbare, her frame too thin, yet her eyes the warm brown Sarah remembered. From school hallways and summer afternoons were the same, only now holding a weariness that said she had learned the language of fear by heart. When she saw Sarah, her face crumpled, and they held each other like lifelines. No words, just the pressure of arms and the wet breath between sobs. They spoke quietly, carefully, as if the walls might be listening. Amanda said there were things she could never say. She said each answer had a cost, and some costs were too high to pay. Sarah wanted to press, to demand the truth the world had been denied, but she recognized the tremor in Amanda's hands, the way she angled her chair toward an exit, the way she flinched at sudden laughter from the counter. Survival had taught Amanda how to live at the edge of flight. So Sarah did the only thing that made sense. She paid the check, got Amanda into the rental car, and drove toward Cedar Falls. The town had grown, the corners smoothed by chain stores and new housing. But the bones were the same. At the hotel, the brightness of the lobby seemed to startle Amanda, not the light itself, but the ordinary ease of it. People checked in, children tugged suitcases, a television murmured in the corner. Normalcy struck her like noise. Upstairs, in the hush of the room, she accepted water, declined food, and sat with both feet planted, as if bracing for impact. "I know you have questions," she said, voice low. "Ask me one." Sarah asked about Kelly. The answer felt like stepping through fire. "Kelly fought," Amanda said, "from the first minute to the last. She fought him at the cabin. She fought every move, every transfer, every hand that tried to close around her life. She kept a list in her head: doors, locks, schedule, habits. She watched, she remembered, she connected with girls when she could, and she never stopped trying. They had been moved constantly: farm work, cleaning companies, back rooms of places that never reported payrolls over state lines, that obscured patterns and jurisdiction. He wasn't alone, Amanda said of the man in the cabin. He was part of something that traded in control, sometimes labor, sometimes worse. The details came in shards: barns that smelled like fertilizer and bleach, motel rooms with windows that didn't open, kitchens that ran through the night, vans that never stopped long. "We learned to breathe without making noise," Amanda said. "We learned to see without turning our heads." 5 years into captivity, Kelly was gone. Amanda didn't describe how. She didn't have to. She never stopped planning, Amanda said, eyes rimmed with red. She built threads of communication with other girls, tiny threads no one could see unless they knew where to look. She mapped their routines in her mind. She kept believing we'd get home. Kelly's planning didn't buy her freedom, but it bent the future. "She saved me," Amanda said simply. "She traded her life for mine, and for a chance that others might survive when the cracks finally opened." The cracks opened slowly. The network frayed under pressures that had nothing to do with Cedar Falls: greed, infighting, unrelated investigations that made certain routes too hot to use. "One day there was a door where there hadn't been one," Amanda said. "It was still locked, but the wall around it was weaker. She took the opportunity. But freedom came with a condition: silence. The only reason I was allowed to leave," she said, "was because I promised to convince people to stop looking. If I talk, they move the others, or they don't move them at all." Sarah hated the math of it: justice cancelled by survival, truth replaced by protection, but she saw the flinch in Amanda's body at the mention of police, the reflex of someone who had learned that every new authority might be a new jailer. "If I speak," Amanda said, "they get hurt. If I stay quiet, some live." It wasn't a riddle. It was the price of breath. They drove to Elm Street. Maria, lost inside the drifting fog of memory, recognized her daughter for a few fragile minutes, and smoothed her hair like a habit her hands remembered. Carlos held Amanda and sobbed, the sound of a man whose heart had been fixed on a single prayer for 3 decades. Amanda's bedroom was a time capsule. High school textbooks lined on a shelf, stuffed animals arranged on a pillow, a graduation dress that had never brushed the air of a ceremony. The sight buckled her. She drifted into the backyard and stared at the sky as if relearning its color. Cedar Falls knew within hours. News travels faster than mercy. Reporters idled at the curb. Former classmates texted and knocked. Some faces brought casseroles and careful smiles. Others brought microphones. Amanda drew smaller under the weight of attention, folding into herself like paper. Retired Detective Morrison came in quietly and sat forward on the couch, elbows on knees, the posture of a man still searching. "We never stopped looking," he said. "I'm sorry we didn't find you sooner." Amanda thanked him, then refused his questions. When he appealed to her conscience, "There are others we could help," she shook her head. "I've already saved everyone I can save. If you push, you'll break people who barely survived the first time." The FBI followed, led by Special Agent Martinez, hair silver now, eyes still sharp. Witness protection was offered. New names, safe houses, a legal scaffold strong enough to hold testimony. Amanda's answer did not change. "You can't force someone to remember what they've chosen to forget," she said. Martinez threatened subpoenas. Amanda's mouth twitched in a sad smile. "You can't subpoena a map I never drew." Silence, in Amanda's hands, had become both armor and shelter. 2 days later, Patricia Thompson arrived with a box of Kelly's photographs and school essays. The meeting was a wound laid bare. "Tell me something true about my girl," Patricia said, voice shaking but steady. Amanda took her hand. "She talked about you all the time," she said, "even years later. The smell of your kitchen, how you edited her first article with a red pen and wrote 'proud of you' in the margin. She never forgot." When Amanda said that Kelly had died 5 years in, Patricia broke, but not into pieces, into prayer. into memory, into a grief that at last had contours. Through tears, she whispered, "She saved you. My Kelly saved you." Amanda nodded. "She saved me," she said, and the words bent the air with their weight. By week's end, Amanda had honored the living and the dead, grieved what could be, grieved, and felt the press of a town that wanted more than she could give. She told Sarah she would leave soon. "I can't be Amanda Rodriguez anymore," she said. "That girl died in the woods 31 years ago. I need a different name, a different story." Sarah thought of all the things she could say. That home could be a place you build inside your scar, that staying might stitch the tear, but she heard the steadiness in Amanda's voice. Freedom, for her, required distance. Sarah nodded. "Then I'll help you go." Life in Cedar Falls adjusted uneasily around Amanda's return. For the Rodriguez family, each day felt like balancing on the edge of a miracle that might dissolve if pressed too hard. Neighbors brought casseroles, local churches offered prayers, and strangers left flowers at the gate. Yet inside the house, silence often ruled. Amanda spoke little, her words measured and careful, as though language itself might betray her. She preferred the backyard, where she sat for hours beneath the same maple tree she had once climbed as a child, eyes tilted skyward, memorizing clouds as if relearning the freedom of open air. The media frenzy only grew. Satellite vans lined the street, reporters hounded anyone connected to the case, and amateur sleuths filled the internet with speculation. Some accused Amanda of complicity, others declared her a hero. None of them knew her. Sarah stayed close, shielding her when she could, reminding her that the world's hunger for answers wasn't her burden to carry. Yet Sarah also wrestled with questions of her own. Was silence truly mercy, or was it another kind of captivity? Amanda chose now to protect others. One evening, over tea in Sarah's hotel room, Amanda finally broke her silence in fragments. "There are others," she said softly, staring into the steam, "but speaking their names puts them in danger. I swore I wouldn't." Sarah reached across the table, covering Amanda's trembling hands. "You don't owe anyone your story," she said. Amanda's eyes lifted, wet and fierce. "But I owe Kelly." The name hung between them like a ghost, pulling the air tight around their throats. Amanda spoke no further that night, but Sarah knew the weight inside her friend's chest was a weight no one else could carry. The FBI, unwilling to let go, renewed pressure. They reminded Amanda of her moral responsibility, showed her photos of missing girls, promised her a new identity if she testified. Amanda listened, her face unreadable. Finally, she whispered, "I've already sacrificed everything I can sacrifice. If you keep digging, you'll destroy the people who managed to survive." Her words, calm yet immovable, left the agents frustrated. They threatened legal action, subpoenas, custody. Amanda only smiled sadly. "You can't force me to remember what I've chosen to forget." It wasn't defiance, it was resignation, a quiet acknowledgement that freedom sometimes meant carrying secrets to the grave. Patricia Thompson, Kelly's mother, became a fixture at the Rodriguez home. Grief had etched deep lines into her face, but her eyes still burned with determination. She sat with Amanda for hours, clutching photographs of Kelly as a child, recounting stories Amanda had heard before, but listened to again, as if repaying a debt. When Amanda finally admitted that Kelly had died 5 years after their disappearance, Patricia broke down, keening like an animal. Yet within her grief, there was pride. "She fought, didn't she?" Patricia asked, voice raw. Amanda nodded, tears sliding unchecked. "She never stopped. She saved me." That knowledge, painful as it was, became Patricia's fragile comfort. Her daughter had not died in vain. Years passed, but the truth never softened. Amanda vanished once again, this time by choice. She left Cedar Falls quietly, without farewell, as though freedom required distance not only from her captors but from those who loved her most. Sarah received a single letter months later. "Please don't look for me. This silence is my gift, and my punishment. Remember me not as what happened, but as what I survived." Sarah read the words until the paper grew thin with folding, then tucked it into a drawer she rarely opened. In the decades that followed, the Shell Rock River remained what it had always been, an innocent landscape forever haunted. Families picnicked on its banks, children splashed in its shallows, teenagers whispered secrets in the twilight. Yet for those who remembered, the place was sacred ground, soaked not in blood but in memory. Search parties combed the woods for years, hoping to find the cabin that had birthed so much pain, but it was never discovered. Some believed it had been destroyed. Others suspected trauma had warped the girls' recollections. To Sarah, it hardly mattered. The cabin lived inside them long after its walls had vanished. By 2030, Sarah's own daughters were grown. Jennifer became a victims' rights advocate, inspired by the mother who had carried unspoken wounds. Lisa pursued software engineering, building systems to help law enforcement trace missing persons. Sarah never told them the whole truth. She only warned them to trust their instincts, to value their safety. They knew their mother had lost close friends to a tragedy long ago, but not the details. Protecting them from the story was, in its way, Sarah's last act of survival. That summer, a package arrived at Sarah's office no-return address, only her name written in a familiar slant. Inside was a single photograph. Amanda, now in her 50s, standing barefoot on a sunlit beach beside another woman. They faced the horizon, hand in hand, hair blown wild by the ocean wind. On the back, scrawled in handwriting Sarah recognized, at once, were the words, "Some of us found our way to happiness. Thank you for helping make that possible. AR." Sarah pressed the photo to her chest, tears blurring the edges. She never tried to trace the sender, never searched for Amanda. Again, respecting her silence, Sarah realized was the truest act of love she could offer. The story of the 3 girls who vanished in 1993 did not end in justice. It ended in choices agonizing, imperfect, human choices. One girl died protecting her friends. One girl survived by guarding secrets that would never reach a courtroom. And one girl carried the burden of memory into a new life, shaping her children's futures with lessons she could never fully explain. And somewhere, in the soft roar of the Shell Rock River, their voices still linger, whispers of sacrifice, survival, and the quiet courage it takes to live on when the world refuses to let you forget. In the years that followed Amanda's final disappearance, Cedar Falls gradually returned to its ordinary rhythms. New families moved into old houses, children biked along quiet streets, and the Shell Rock River continued its eternal journey as though nothing had ever disturbed its waters. Yet beneath the town's surface, memory lingered, a scar invisible to outsiders, but deeply etched in the hearts of those who remembered the summer of 1993. The Rodriguez family bore the cost most heavily. Carlos passed away in his sleep, only 18 months after Amanda's brief return. His heart, though strong enough to survive decades of uncertainty, could not withstand the final weight of release. Maria, already slipping into the fog of dementia, lived out her remaining days in a memory care home. In her mind, Amanda was still 18, walking through the door after school, full of stories and laughter. That version of her daughter never aged, never suffered, never disappeared, and perhaps, Sarah thought, that was its own kind of mercy. Patricia Thompson turned her grief into action. She established a foundation to support families of the missing, pouring every ounce of her pain into creating resources she had once desperately needed herself. She became a quiet but formidable advocate, standing beside mothers and fathers in police stations, helping them endure the endless waiting. When she died of cancer in 2029, her legacy was not only Kelly's memory, but a lifeline for countless families whose stories might otherwise have been forgotten. Detective Morrison, long retired, wrote a book reflecting on the cases that had defined his career. In one chapter, he told the story of Cedar Falls not as a crime solved, but as a meditation on the moral complexities that arise when the pursuit of justice collides with the need to protect survivors. He never revealed Amanda's new identity, never even admitted publicly that she had returned. But in his letters from readers, victims, families, ordinary citizens, he sometimes wondered if Amanda herself had written to him. Hidden behind careful words of gratitude, Sarah, meanwhile, lived quietly in California, raising her daughters into strong, thoughtful women. Jennifer became a victims' rights advocate, fighting for laws that prioritized healing over prosecution. Lisa became a software engineer, designing systems to track cold cases more efficiently. Sarah never burdened them with the full truth, but she instilled in them a fierce instinct for empathy, and a belief that survival was not weakness but its own form of triumph. The abandoned cabin was never found. Teams with radar and drones scoured the woods. Theories abounded. Some said it had been destroyed, others believed it was hidden too well, or that trauma had distorted the girls' memories. But for Sarah, Amanda, and Kelly, its physical presence no longer mattered. The cabin had been demolished long ago, in their hearts replaced with something more enduring, the lessons they carried forward. In 2030, 37 years after that terrible day at the river, Sarah received a package with no return address. Inside was a photograph of Amanda, smiling on a beach with another woman, her posture relaxed, her eyes alive with peace. On the back were words in Amanda's familiar handwriting. "Some of us found our way to happiness. Thank you for helping make that possible." Sarah placed the photo on her desk, where it remained for the rest of her life, a daily reminder that survival could take many forms. For Cedar Falls, the tragedy became folklore, a cautionary tale whispered to children about the dangers of wandering too far, a story parents told to keep their families close. But for those who lived through it, it was never legend. It was memory. It was sacrifice. It was reality. And so the story of three girls who vanished at the river did not end with headlines or arrests. It ended in silence and love, in sacrifice and survival. Kelly Thompson died protecting her friends. Amanda Rodriguez lived by protecting others. And Sarah Chen Kim carried their legacy by honoring both kinds of courage. The Shell Rock River still flows, its waters carrying secrets downstream. Families still gather on its banks, unaware of the ghosts who linger there. And somewhere in America, a woman once called Amanda Rodriguez lives quietly under another name, her life rebuilt on fragile but steady foundations. The world may never know the full truth of what happened in 1993, but for those who mattered, the truth was enough. Because in the end, their story was never just about disappearance. It was about presence, the presence of love that endures, of courage that sacrifices, and of survival that refuses to be extinguished. And in that presence, the girls of Cedar Falls live on, not as victims of a mystery, but as bearers of a legacy, written not in police reports or gravestones, but in the hearts of those who remember them.